Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and I'm going to be talking about Another Life, Season 1, Episode 1. It's called Across the Universe. So, as in Episode 1, we'll start spoiler-free, as we do with Episode 1s. I'll give you some warning later on if I want to go into some spoilers. This is Netflix... this is Netflix. This is Netflix's new show, which actually launched yesterday. I thought it was launching today. If I had known it was launching yesterday, I'd have done this yesterday. But for some reason, this was out on a Thursday, and I never realised. But I thought it was worth having a look at, and I'm doing this solo, no Connor today. The pre-reviews weren't that hot, the trailer didn't look that good, but I wanted to give it a try anyway and just see if it was worth covering, if it was worth watching any more of. Kind of thing. Katie Sackhoff's in it, which is kind of the big thing about it. You know, she played Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica, which I was a big fan of. So that's kind of the one main thing it has going for it in terms of positive, you know, pre-release press. So what is the premise of Another Life? Another Life is basically a strange UFO enters Earth, and it lands in a field and forms a structure. And this structure is sending a signal to somewhere in space. They figure out where it's sending a signal to, and Katie Sackhoff is going to be the captain on the mission, the ship that is going to go out there and try and make contact with whatever sent this thing. Meanwhile, her husband happens to be the guy who's like the scientist on the ground trying to analyze the object and communicate with it and so on and so on. And that's kind of what we're doing. So, yeah, so it's mainly it's a space show. It's a crew and a spaceship. Things go wrong fairly quickly, and the mission's going to take longer than they thought it was. There's tension on board because she's kind of replacing this other guy who was the captain, played by Tyler Hoechlin, who played Superman on Supergirl, and she's kind of seen as this this new captain's been forced upon them. We also find out her backstory includes kind of an accident, which is why everyone doesn't really trust her that much. They're all a bit skittish about her being on there. And that's kind of the basic premise of the show. As to whether or not it was any good, was this first episode promising? Does it make me want to watch more? The answer is definitely no. I have no interest in watching any more of this thing. Had I not been watching anything else, obviously, which is not even close to true, it hasn't for a long time since we do this channel. But if I was watching nothing else, I would maybe check out another episode or two just to see if it gets better, just because it is sci-fi stuff and I like sci-fi. But that is the extent of it. I pretty much hated this. This was a full hour, and the characters are pretty bland, very two-dimensional. Sackhoff is one of the only reasonable actors on the show, really. I mean, that's not entirely true. There's a few decent actors, but there's definitely a few clunkers that really stick out. The main one that really stuck out to me immediately was her husband character, who's the one who stays on Earth. He is abysmal. He is a void where charisma once was, but is there no more because his face showed up. I don't know, and I'm not making fun of his face. It's just his performance, his acting, his delivery of lines is so unconvincing. It's so unconvincing when he's like crying with his wife because she's going into space and he's upset that she's leaving. It's unconvincing when he's playing scientist man, when he's taking care of his daughter, in her absence. All of it is unconvincing. They're Skype calls, which are more hologram Skype calls, like across space. Unconvincing. Every single part of it. I hate his character. And it's not because he does anything particularly wrong. He's just so direly bland. It's unreal. But the big problem with this episode, specifically, is that there's very little to make me care about any of the characters on the show. And the conflict of the episode does come from, Katie Sackhoff's character Nico as the captain, and it was Tyler Hoechlin's character who was the captain of this crew before. And it's kind of awkward, it's kind of weird, there's some disputes about how to handle certain things. And the problem is that when things kind of ramp up tension-wise, when the disputes bubble up and actually turn into arguments that lead to sort of... Well, I don't want to spoil anything, but when it leads to things, right? When it leads to like some sort of culmination, I didn't buy any of it. Nothing felt like it was actually earned. Nothing felt like they were actually seeding, like... They kept playing, like, Tyler Hoechlin's character was really frustrating to me because I think he's an okay actor. I liked him on Supergirl, but his character here is very frustrating because he seems like, at first, like he's willing to go along with everything, and he's trying to be the good second in command who stepped down for the captain. And that, okay, that's fine if that turns out not to be the case, that he's actually seeded on the inside, and whatever. It's fine if there's a natural debate as to is she up to running this mission. We know from her early on, she actually mentions to her husband that she doesn't believe that he's capable of running this mission. That's one of her reasons why she goes on the mission. And he goes back and forth where he kind of does this big thing, and it ends up kind of coming back and hitting him in the face. It doesn't go very well. And then from that point on, you think he's kind of learned his lesson. And okay, fine. I didn't really buy it when it escalated in the first place to when he did go to this point, but because at one point there's an argument where they disagree about a plan of action. They're having to re-navigate, like, because there's an obstacle in their path. I can't remember exactly what they called it, but they want to like go around it, so they want to like slingshot around the planet or a sun rather, and get to this new system. They've been in cryo sleep, for a few months, and the ship does go faster than light. It's got an FTL drive. Fun term that was also used in Battlestar Galactica, might add. Not that it's only used in that, it's been used in a bunch of sci-fi things, but was used in Battlestar Galactica. It made me think of that immediately as soon as they started talking about it, because Katie Sackhoff at Starbuck. But yeah, so this argument kind of comes out of nowhere for me. Even though they tease that there is a little bit of tension because they're kind of feeling weird, it just goes from 0 to 11 immediately, and it didn't really feel like it was earned to me. And the episode, despite being, it has that magic, in a bad way, that magic formula where the episode is a full 60 minutes, and it somehow feels like it drags on too much, but doesn't actually develop enough and give enough time to things. Like, there's a lot of like plot lines and like character dynamics where I'm like, that could use more time and that could use more time. But the thought of making this episode longer is terrifying, because it does drag on and it feels like it wastes a lot of time. So ultimately what I'm saying is better writing. I'm saying, actually use your time wisely, use it to build the characters. There's a lot of like crew building, or not a lot, but there's a few crew building scenes where we get a little bit of interaction from the smaller characters who we're kind of getting to know. And it all just feels very kind of hollow. It feels like we don't really have characters. We just have the plug-in. It'd almost be better if they were archetypes. I was going to say, because they're not archetypes. That they're like, it almost feels like they're going out of their way to not have archetypes. But the problem is that they're not doing anything with them, so they all feel very kind of bland. There's the slightly, more forgiving and lovable chubby nerdy guy, maybe. There's the more hothead lady. There's the, there's a few slight like characteristics, but not enough, not a lot. The one who gets the most time actually is not a crew member. It's the AI, William, who does get scared like a human being, but he's just a hologram and he is the ship's computer. But he does actually seem to have doubts and feelings and gets nervous and all sorts. I'm assuming that's something that they'll explore more as the episodes go on. He actually gets probably the most character development out of any of the characters, because they spend time to kind of like establish that he is this way. Whereas it's just kind of taken for granted how the other characters are, and that's kind of an issue. Not that I expect every character to like shine in episode 1, not by a long shot, but a good pilot, a good first episode will get across who these characters are, how they interact with each other, and do it in a way that doesn't just feel like we're dumping exposition on us. Just recently, me and Connor started, going back and reviewing Firefly, and obviously it's maybe a bit of a tall order to compare a show to Firefly, but if you go back and watch that first episode, if you watch that double pilot, Serenity, like, by the end of that episode, you understand who every character is and how every combination almost would play out. You understand the relationship between Jane and Kaylee. You understand the relationship between Wash and Mal, or Zoe and Mal, or Zoe and Kaylee. Like, almost every possible combination, even if you don't necessarily get a good example of it in the episode, you get enough of different pairings and you understand the dynamics between them all that you really get a sense of who all the characters are after one episode. And okay, this isn't as long as that double episode, but that was a double network show, so this is like, it's an episode and a half of a network show, a full 60 minutes. It's got time to do this. And instead of feeling like I got a sense of who any characters are, they just feel like a blank slate of about, I don't know, there's like maybe 10 of them. I'm not even sure. Uh, you know, of course I don't know any of their names. Why would I got Nico and I got William, and that was about it. That was the only names I really got in this entire episode. They don't have any personalities, not really. It's about as bland as a crew as you can possibly get. And then the actual sci-fi of it, the mission, it just kind of feels like it's going through the motions. It feels, we hear her have one conversation with her husband before she has to go on the mission, and then we just cut to her waking up from cryo sleep later, which, again, on its own, that could be fine, depending on how you're handling it. But you almost feel like it's wanting to do that thing where she wakes up and we kind of discover the ship, we discover the crew, whilst we're out there. It's essentially trying to do the aliens thing. It's, Ripley waking up in the Sulaco, and that's how we sort of learn who the Marines are, once she wakes up, and we learn kind of what the ship's like, and, there's a lot, again, I'm comparing it to really great things. I mean, I'm comparing it to things that are like, some of the most beloved science fiction there is. But it's playing through some of the same beats that, some of these things are doing without doing it. And you watch Aliens, within the first couple of minutes of Ripley waking up, you get the relationship between Vasquez and... Vasquez's buddy. I can't remember his name. It's like, I'm not saying just because I can't remember one character's name from Aliens does not mean there's a lot of Marines on that movie. But the relationship. You know who I'm talking about if you've seen that movie. Her buddy, and they both seem to love big guns together, right? You get that relationship. You get Apone immediately, the way he barks out orders. You get Bill Paxton, Hudson, and the way he is kind of a little egotistical shit. You get that Hicks is more reserved. You get Bishop, the android. You get all these characters. Within about 5-10 minutes, that movie kind of gives you a sense of who a bunch of these characters are. This TV show in an hour didn't give me that for really any of them. And the one character who obviously has plot, because he's the antagonist of the episode, which is Tyler Hoechlin's character, he just feels like he comes across as forced. Everything that he does is done because the episode needs plot, not because it feels like they actually earn it through the character getting to that point. So that's really rough. The stuff back in Earth, I didn't like either. It was mainly her husband just hanging around in front of this like crystal structure that the aliens built and throwing noises at it, realizing that it kind of reacts to certain sound waves and music. By the end of the episode, they get it to... Well, I'm not in spoilers, but... Okay, I'll stop there because I'm not in spoilers. But that's basically what that's doing down there on Earth. And I actually hated that we cut back to him. I was hoping that at least... maybe he's only in the one scene at the start when I hated the actor, but then we went back to him. He's a recurring theme. He's got several scenes in the episode. So I guess I will say spoilers from here on out so I can talk about where it goes and what it does. So yeah, like I was saying, on Earth, it gets it to play the music back at him. And that's basically it. So the idea that they're kind of getting to some level of contact, or at least interaction with this device or object or structure, whatever you want to call it. On the ship, because they have to take this detour, if they just fly around at their top speed, it'll add 7 months onto their journey. And their journey to begin with is 3 months there and 3 months back. So adding on 7 is more than doubling the whole journey. Obviously, this is not very appealing. So some of them come up with a plan to speed things up by using the gravity of the star to slingshot them further ahead and save some time. And they're going to go along with it. And things start going wrong. It starts getting shaky. They start getting a lot of turbulence, and clearly it's not working. They're putting themselves in danger. And Nico makes the call to back out, and this really upsets Tyler Hoechlin. They have a bit of a fight whilst they're arguing over whether or not they should abandon this move or not. After this, they have a fight again because he comes to her with an idea. He's like, okay, so when we're in FTL, we essentially have a shield because of just a natural thing that's created from FTL. Sure, I'll go with it, whatever. How remotely accurate that would be, probably. I doubt it, but if someone wants to tell me it is true, then sure, but I'm skeptical. And, William, the computer, says, there's a 11% chance this will fail. The shield will fail and it won't work, and we're just doomed. And he's like, well, that's 89%. That's pretty good odds. And Nico's like, no, it's not good enough. It's too dangerous. You have to come up with something more certain. And this is where he goes from 0 to 11. He gets very angry very quickly, and it feels very out of nowhere. It doesn't feel like a slow build at all. It feels like he's just going straight to this emotion, and it just doesn't feel earned one bit. To the point where when she orders that they're going to go back into cryo sleep and just go the long way and add this time because it's better safe than sorry. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, as she puts it. He decides to get a couple of the crew to mutiny against her and says that they've lost faith in her leadership capabilities, and they forcibly, and she puts up a fight. She busts one of the crew members' noses. She kicks a couple of guys, but she's forcefully put into cryo sleep, or soma sleep as they call it on the ship. I'm calling it cryo sleep because that's just what it's called in most, sci-fi spaceship stuff. But so while she's knocked out, he basically tells the rest of the crew, and no part of this, that he's now in charge. William kind of rebels and says no, he's supposed to follow Nico's orders, and they get the diplomatic guy who's barely had an introduction. He has like two little moments where he feels bad because they make him feel old, even though he's clearly not that old. This dude is like barely 30. And someone who is like maybe 25 has made him feel old. It's really weird, especially since like on a mission like this, I wouldn't expect anyone to be in their 20s. I feel like everyone who's went through enough vetting and enough training and enough experience to get to this point. I mean, admittedly, maybe it's the future, so space travel is more common, which it does seem like it is, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like it's super. We don't see any other spaceships. We don't see any evidence that there's like tons of space travel going on. There's one mention of like space stations in orbit of Earth that you can go and visit, and it's very expensive. The rich people do it. We hear that mentioned briefly. But I don't know. I feel like if anything, I would expect there. I mean, obviously the answer is they want a lot of attractive people on the ship because it's a TV show, and we have to pretend it's a CW, I guess. But so they put her in cryosleep. They try and do their thing, and what would you believe it? It doesn't work, and the ship starts breaking down. They lose. I believe their FTL drive is broke, which is obviously going to make everything impossibly long unless they can get it fixed. And it's actually one of the crew goes and wakes Nico up in the middle of all this because it's very clear that Hoechlin won't be able to deal with this. And sure enough, she wakes up and she gives out some orders, and they kind of stabilize, and the ship's in complete ruin though. They're going to spend ages fixing things, so on and so on. And there's a moment where I didn't feel that this was earned either, but at least it made sense to me in the point of the show, is that after this has happened and everything's calmed down and the crew's kind of bickering amongst themselves, Nico comes in and says, look, you don't like me, I don't care, we have to do this mission. So everyone get back to work. And Tyler Hoechlin's behind her and says, you heard Nico, everyone move it. And it felt weird to me not to have a scene between them before this scene where like he clearly like comes to an agreement to back her up, or they address the fact that he mutinied and basically ruined the ship and everything. It felt weird not to have a scene before this scene, or make it more of a thing where there's more of a pause where he, it's a moment. It'd be different if they played it like a moment where this was the moment where he stepped up to kind of almost by doing this admit that he was in the wrong and that she is the captain. And her having a reaction to it, him sort of like making it, make a big deal of it in the scene, make it like a prominent moment, but it doesn't do that. He just does it as if we're already expecting it, and we're not expecting it. It's weird. Of course, this actually ultimately goes nowhere because the end of the episode is his death. Tyler Hoechlin is not a main recurring character on this show unless he's like a zombie or something after this. There's like weird electrical trouble like down in the engineering space, and they're alone. It's Nico and him alone down there. And despite the fact that it seemed like he was backing her up in the previous scene, he starts like questioning things and goes, "Oh, you should have done the same. I was thinking of the mission first." And he gets really accusatory and says, like, that you think about yourself and no one else, and she disputes that. He says, yeah, you think about your daughter, but if it came down to your daughter or your crew, what would you pick? And she hesitates, And he's like, there's my answer. Here's my problem with this line of thinking. The only way it would come down to, the crew or her daughter, if she's making a choice, right? Um, Surely in that situation, it's like the crew or the whole planet of Earth. In the context of them being out in this ship and going to meet these aliens, like if they're in a decision making point where it's going to be them or the daughter, like because obviously she wants to get back to her daughter, like the decision's not going to be about like her sacrificing the crew for no reason. It would be presumably because it'll save Earth and save her daughter included, right? And surely, given their mission, if they're in a position where it's them or saving Earth, surely they should be making that choice. That's the choice they should be making, because the whole mission, the whole point of this is to try and save Earth and make sure that the aliens aren't going to kill everyone. I don't know. His line of thinking here didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And it just kind of goes along with a lot of the episode where things are just happening because it's supposed to be what makes tension. It's supposed to be what makes conflict in the episode, but none of the conflict feels very earned. Again, it feels like it's just going through the motions of like, they're mad because of the new captain. It's very wafer thin. If it does, the writing does feel CW-esque, and its lack of nuance and its lack of actual depth. And I'm not saying that because there's an actor or two from a CW show on here, because I think someone from The Flash is on here. I'm trying to remember her name in The Flash. The one Cisco was dating for a while, who could also teleport. No, it's not coming back to me. Sorry, but if you've seen The Flash, you may know what I'm talking about. She's one of the crew members. So, I mean, I did enjoy his death itself because it was kind of ridiculous and over the top, but it did feel like, wait, what? Just what? Because he actually, again, like, nothing about his character suggests to me that he would actually become homicidal by the end of the episode, but he picks up a knife, he gets all sinister and is like, I've got problems with you, and blah, and he's walking towards her with this knife. And I thought this must be a swerve. They're going to like say, he's just handing it to her to like help with what she's doing because she's working on a piece of machinery. And instead, she sees him with the knife and kicks him back into this electrical sort of field that's like happening down here because of the damage, and his entire upper body like burns in electricity, and he falls to the ground dead. And that's the end of the episode. And I mean, I'll give it credit. I did not see this ending coming. I assumed he was going to be a main regular character. I assumed that's what they were going to be building a lot of the tension out of, is like him sort of learning to actually work under her or something. The ending just feels weird to me. Like, I guess the drama here now is that the crew suspect that she just did this out of spite, that she's mad at him for what he did. And they won't believe her that it was self-defense. But I don't know. Like, the final, like, I enjoyed the effect of it happening because it was kind of goofy. Although on the subject of effects, I do actually think the visual effects in this are ropey at times. The ship in space is okay. That tends to be one of the easier things for visual effects to do okay with on TV and movies. It was the ship that comes in at the start to Earth that looked a little bit off for me. The alien ship, and then when it lands in the field, there's the cloud of smoke coming from it. The debris, and that looked really bad to me. It looked really fake smoke and dirt and so on. And then the actual like structure, which is all this crystal, just looked kind of fake as well. There was a lot of things that just weren't quite good enough. They just felt a little bit off, which is a shame in your sci-fi show. Which again would be okay if the writing was good. It'd be okay if I was engaged in the characters. Unfortunately, the characters have the charisma and depth of a wet paper towel, and as a result, it was a tedious hour to get through. I felt every single second of the runtime, and I want no part of episode 2. Funny death at the end is the only real high point, to be honest. Mainly, it was one of those things where it was just funny because I didn't expect him to die, and it was just like all of a sudden he was kicked into this electrical current and his face was burned off. I did not expect him to die, let alone in such a grotesque, ridiculous way. So I laughed a little bit at that, so I'll give it that. But that is the extent of my positives. It is a very, very if I don't understand what the point is. I don't understand what the idea was here. and why someone thought they had a good idea for a TV show, why Netflix decided to fund this. Because, well, Netflix movies have a really bad track record. I feel like Netflix TV shows do have a lot of quality. I mean, not everything's got quality, but they've got a good track record for the most part, I think. And this is not in that good track record. So, unfortunately, I cannot recommend Another Life in any way, shape, or form. Big fat skip for me. So let me know what you thought of the first episode in the comments below. You can like and subscribe, all that stuff. Actually, just one final point. Like everything it's doing, we've seen done better elsewhere. The AI that has a personality, hell, I mean, it's practically a little bit like Bishop from Aliens when you think about it. I mean, obviously he wasn't a hologram, but there's parallels there. The crew in the ship kind of lost in space. Seen it a million times, basically, at this point. So yeah, it's very derivative, and that would be fine if the writing was good and I cared about the characters and I cared about what they were doing. Maybe the first contact element would be what makes it interesting. I don't know, but just last week we got a release date for season 4 of The Expanse, and that cannot come quick enough. This I will never watch another episode again of, so thank you very much. But let me know what you thought of the episode in the comments. Like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show and the channel and everything we do here, you can head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv, where you can support us for as little as $1 per month and get bonuses, extras, exclusives, and some stuff early, all that kind of stuff. As for more Netflix shows coming, we are very close to Mindhunter Season 2, Dear White People Season 3, and Glow Season 3. All of those will be coming on this podcast audio feed and on the YouTube channel in the next few weeks. I'll be doing Glow on my own this season. Both me and Connor will be doing Mindhunter and Dear White People. So look forward to those. And also, we actually just recorded our first review of 3% Season 3, which we're doing a little bit late because the schedule was so busy. So that's coming as well. So look forward to that. But that is me. So thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?